McMenamin's Edgefield Brewfest is happening once again on Saturday, June 27th. From noon to 7 p.m., there will be live music, lawn games, and everyone is invited, including your kids and well-behaved dogs. Bring chairs and blankets, sit back and relax all day long while enjoying a selection of over 100 of the Pacific Northwest's finest craft beers and ciders. Get tickets now at McMenamins.com. That's McMenamins.com.
Today on CityCast Portland, we're talking about our very serious proposals to bring down the state's median age, why City Council can't seem to agree on how to fund about 100 city jobs, and the headache that we have all experienced getting delayed by trains on the Central Eastside. I'm executive producer John Notarianni in for Claudia Meza, who just had a birthday over the weekend. Happy birthday, Claudia. And joining us today are Willamette Week City Hall reporters Sophie Peel and Garrett Andrews, who's a Willamette Week contributor and adjunct professor of political science at Portland Community College. Hey, you guys. How's it going?
Hi, John.
Hey, John.
Hey. Well, to get started, we always like to ask an opening question so our listeners can get to know our guests a little bit better. And today, I wanted to talk about some reporting by Khushbu Rathore at the Oregon Journalism Project about the fact that Oregon now has the 11th oldest population in the United States. Oregon is getting old. We have a median age of 40.4. And that's just because a lot of people who are in their prime working years are leaving and more people aren't coming in to sort of replace them in the state. So if you want to feel youthful, the oldest counties in Oregon are Wheeler County out in the east with a median age of 59. And out on the southwest coast, Curry County, they're at 57. So you can feel like a cool, I know, isn't that wild?
How does that
happen? Just old people stay and no young people come, I guess. I mean, it's a big deal because young people do drive the economy. They are more adaptable. They can lead in new technologies, changing industries. And it's sort of just an indicator of young people aren't staying. That's a big deal. So the governor's taking this seriously. Earlier this year, she convened a prosperity council of local business leaders to try and figure it out. But they need some help. Have you guys seen the draft of their plan?
No.
Basically, what they're proposing is to cut a bunch of regulations and to cut a bunch of taxes, including taxes on high earners, which I don't know how that is going to help us retain our young population. But this is the idea that's being kicked around. It's been panned by a bunch of labor organizations and environmental groups. And they're going to be coming up with a final proposal later this month.
I feel like every single task force that the governor puts together, the end result is that they just issue a report that says, lower the taxes.
Yeah.
That's just a tale as old as time.
It's not it. It's task force, this is not it. So I don't know, maybe we can fix it, you guys. I'm wondering what your ideas, serious or unserious, to convince young people to move to Oregon are. What do you think?
Two things. I mean, I think if you're a pet person, specifically a dog person, Portland is a really fantastic city to be in because you can pretty much go up to any dog owner on the street in Portland and they will give you a 30-second rundown of how they found the dog, what rescue they got from, how old it is, what its backstory is. Every dog owner in Portland, I feel has done the DNA test so they can tell you the percentage breakdown down to the 2% makeup of the dog.
Yeah.
It's just a very charming thing that I've found in Portland. The other thing is I think Portland is one of those kind of those rare cities where the plots of land that houses sit on are just big enough to where you can have an actual kind of garden. Whether it's a flower or vegetable garden. And I am just constantly amazed walking around Portland and all different types of neighborhoods, how beautiful and carefully put together people's gardens are. I was walking in the Overlook neighborhood last weekend, and there's this elderly couple that for just 30 minutes was telling me and my friends about their garden. They pretty much feed themselves with their garden. They had these massive cabbages and they had a rose bush that they had rescued in the late, 70s that was still blooming. And it was just it was magical. They had bees and maybe that's not a super serious one, but I found it to just be something that really kind of brightens my day on a micro level.
So you're saying more dogs and more gardens is
yes,
your plan?
Rescue more dogs.
Yeah. Okay.
And everyone plant more cabbage.
Yeah. Okay. Right. More cabbages. I like it. What about you, Garrett?
I think Sophie's right about dogs too. There's many people I've met, I've walked up, I've met the dog, walked away knowing the dog's name, didn't get any details about the person. But as far as like serious and unserious solutions here, I was thinking we could maybe hang around Utah a little bit more. They're the youngest mean age with 32. Alaska, Texas, pretty young states. We could, my mind went right to the Steve Buscemi meme there.
Fellow kids.
And then, if you're trying to spread the wealth, I mean, grants for first-time home buyers is obviously huge. And then one thing I hear from my students a lot, and this wouldn't have occurred to me, but, we try to make voting pretty easy in Oregon with all mail-in voting and with our motor voter law. And a lot of students are like, why not go further with online voting? And I don't have a great answer for why not. I mean, that's true, like direct democracy, everybody voting on everything. But if we're trying to make it easier for people to vote and get engaged, having more, online opportunities for them to sound off is something that students seem to like. So
that's a brilliant idea. Yeah. I mean, I can imagine that, the MAGA coalition would have flames shooting out of their ears if we allowed you to vote on a computer. But I could see how that could really turn the tide. And I'm so with you on like the idea of like a first time homebuyer program. When I was thinking seriously about that, that's sort of where my head was at too. It's like, what are the things that are going to like get someone rooted here and like plant them here? And there's so many, like we all know people or are in the situation ourselves where trying to buy a house is just next to impossible right now. So that could really do it.
Yeah. And I was reading there are some programs and I was like, well, just put more money there.
Yeah, just put more money there. My thought, thinking of like what is going to root somebody in Oregon, home buying is a big thing. But I also think like when you're in a couple, you're a lot less likely to like want to leave. You build a life together, you sort of get rooted in a place. So my idea is like a NASA moonshot style initiative to create the perfect dating app. Like really just put like millions of dollars of like state money into creating the perfect dating app, allowing people to find each other, like no bullshit, no like venture capital, like algorithm messing, just like get people together, make them fall in love, and then they'll stay in Oregon forever. That's what I think we should do.
Like IRL, as the kids say, like in real life.
Mm-hmm. In real life, yeah. So
none of that online stuff.
If there's any programming wizards out there, or any benefactors, anybody with a couple $1 million who want to throw towards my idea, let me know.
I will say this is a bit of a tangent, but like a couple times in the past year, there's been like two different guys who have basically like made a poster for themselves about why they're such an eligible bachelor and that they really want a girlfriend. They've just like tacked them to all the phone polls. Yeah. It's really cute. It's awesome. And they did the thing where they have their phone number going vertically and then you can just like pull off a little piece of the paper so you have the phone number. It's very charming.
Are the numbers being taken? Like, are they actually being pulled off?
Yes. For what purpose, I don't know. Who knows? But I'd like to think they are being taken by nice ladies.
Yeah, and you got to take a few of those yourself before you put it up, obviously.
Well, exactly. Right. You gotta look desirable. Yeah.
It's like putting $1 in the tip jar when you start your shift.
Right.
So people know this is where you want to be.
Right. This is where it's at.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for your answers. Let's take a quick break. And then, Sophie, I want to hear about some reporting that you've been doing about what's going on at City Council.
Listen up, LGBTQ plus community. If you're looking for a new healthcare provider, check out Bywater Health. That's Bywater with a BY. They're founded by a queer nurse practitioner and are offering comprehensive primary care, HIV treatment and prevention, same-day STI testing, and more. Bywater Health combines expert clinical care with the radical joy of queer culture, so no judgment, no filters, just smart, sex-positive medicine that respects your identity. They also accept most commercial insurance plans. You can find out more details and request an appointment by visiting bywaterhealth.com. Again, that's Bywater with a BY. bywaterhealth.com. Got leftover paint, stain, or varnish taking up space in your basement or garage? You're not alone. Many of us finish a project and end up with half-used cans we're just not sure what to do with. Don't let them sit there collecting dust, taking up space. Recycle them with Paint Care. Whether it's cans from a recent renovation or years of storage, Paint Care helps ensure your paint is managed responsibly and kept out of landfills. Drop off your cans for free at one of more than 175 conveniently located drop-off sites across Oregon. To find a drop-off site near you, visit paintcare.org. That's paintcare.org.
All right, Sophie, we are in the crunch of budget negotiation time at the city, and you had a story about an impasse at city council last week. What's going on?
Yeah, well, this has sort of become standard practice with our city council, but they, like you said, they've been sort of mired in budget discussions, and they really kind of had their last push this past week, and they brought up a whole, other bunch of amendments, and a number of them, kind of from different faction of the council, were trying to save some of the jobs that are slated to be cut under Mayor Wilson's proposed budget. And so he's proposing about 150 eliminated positions. Not all of those are filled positions, but a lot of them are. So quite a few layoffs under his proposed budget. And 3 members of the city's progressive caucus, Peacock, they made a proposal that would have prevented 100 layoffs across public safety, across parks, pretty much across, internal services, like across basically the entire city. That died by a 6-6 vote, which, if it's 6-6, then it dies. And then another proposal by 2 of the more moderate councilors, which was kind of a pared down version of the Peacock proposal, but also would have saved some of the public safety jobs and some of the public safety programs, died sort of by a similar fate. And both were going to pull primarily from the Portland Clean Energy Fund's interest money that is being accrued in the current fiscal year. Obviously, this current fiscal year is almost over, but that, PSEF is a big pot of money. It's accruing interest every single year. So they both wanted to pull from that funding source. Both proposals died. That was on Wednesday. And going into Thursday, it seemed like the councilors, kind of the 2 factions, maybe were open to finding kind of a middle ground where everyone could get on board and they could save at least some of these jobs. And on Thursday, it became clear pretty quickly that just wasn't going to happen. It kind of devolved into finger pointing near the end of the meeting. Council President Jamie Dunphy, said, "I'm ending the meeting at 1 p.m. We're not going to talk about any more amendments." And one of the moderate councilors who had kind of proposed what she called a middle ground was like, no, I was in the queue 2 minutes before 1 p.m. You got to let me introduce my amendment. Mm-hmm. And the council president was like, nope, I'm ending it. And then, of course, someone challenged that ruling. And so they had to take a vote on that. And that died. I mean, it just turned into like what we have seen time and time again of this council fighting over process issues. But really, it's kind of a proxy for ideological divide. So it was a bummer. And, I don't know if those layoffs were appropriate or not appropriate. I mean, layoffs are never good, right? But it just turned bitter, as it so often does with this council.
The thing that's wild here is like, it seems like everybody wanted to preserve the jobs, right? It's not like there was a huge discussion about like, oh, we should or should not keep these jobs. They just couldn't find a way to agree on the process and the scope of it. And that is so much more upsetting to me than like a real, more fundamental ideological divide. It just seems like they're squabbling over sort of small incremental differences. And the outcome at this point is something that doesn't please anyone, right?
Yeah, for sure. A lot of times with this council, it feels like it has come down more to, like whose side am I on, not necessarily the issue itself. Mm-hmm. I will say the 2 proposals were, like you said, very different in scope. One was a much more pared down version, like the number of layoffs was going to be much smaller under one proposal than the other. So there was an issue around scope. I think some of the councilors who didn't like the Peacock's proposal, which again was much larger, said it just feels like we're kicking the can down the road because PSEF interest money is one-time funding. So you're basically saying we're going to save these jobs for 1 year and then what? We're going to have another fiscal cliff. Our budget situation's not getting better. Like basically we're just punting the hard decisions to, a year from now. So I think that was one of the arguments. I think there were valid arguments really on both sides. And, I certainly don't want to like take a stand on like which argument is the better argument. But I think for me, it's been really frustrating to watch how this council kind of falls into very like repeated, I don't know, I guess like tropes of just personality versus actual policy.
Yeah, yeah. And in your reporting, you sort of like outline a sort of a spat between Counselor Angelita Murillo and Alana Purtle-Guinea, basically over like text messages, and like, you didn't respond to my texts or calls. And then Alana Purtle-Guinea was like, I didn't get any calls or texts this morning. It just, it just feels so personal. Which, we're talking about 100 city jobs. It just seems like not the right way to go about it. Ugh.
I would agree.
Garrett, you are an observer of governance. You come from the rarefied space of academia. What's your read on like what's going on with city council right now?
I just wonder, I know that this is the mayor's underlying budget here, but I wonder how much of this would have been saved by having a tie-breaking vote on the council, Sophie.
I think behind the scenes that's reinvigorated that discussion a little bit, because the city attorney's interpretation of the new charter is that the mayor only has a tie-break vote on like final ordinances or resolutions. So that means on amendments to policies, he does not have a tie-break vote. So his tie-break powers are actually very, very narrow, and they wouldn't apply in this situation. Now, if they got to like the final budget, right, the final vote with all the changes incorporated, if that was a 6-6 tie, which that's just not going to happen. But if it were, my understanding is that he would have a tie-break vote on that. But again, like, I don't know if the mayor I don't even know if there's been a vote under this new form of government where he has used his tie-break powers because it is so limited in scope.
And I also wondered about, like, you had recently reported on the serial meetings rule, and if they would have been able to maybe work something out behind the scenes. I know that, people don't like the idea of a smoke-filled room and people all coming to the budget meeting with everybody in agreement. And you're like, how did this happen? We didn't watch any of this happen in the public process. But do you think maybe that could have, like, avoided some of these issues as well?
It's interesting. I know I wrote that story about how Council President Dunphy was like kind of lambasted the serial meetings law and said it was resulting in like embarrassment for the council and like, disagreements that didn't have to be. I think the issue is much bigger than the serial meetings law. I actually think that is not really what's going on here. Maybe it's making communication a little bit harder, but I am a little dubious that that's really the issue going on. And I'm not saying Councilor Dunphy necessarily like that was like a cop out or anything. Like, I think it is a real issue. And I do think sometimes it has led to some really sour moments between counselors that maybe could have been avoided. But I think the issue is much deeper than just that law.
Yeah, Sophie, like, we have your reporting on this, which is fascinating, but I imagine that you're also having like off the record conversations with some of the council members about this process and like not asking you to name any names, but like, what are you hearing behind the scenes of how they're feeling about how this is going? Because I have to imagine that they're really fucking frustrated too.
Well, not good. Yeah, I would say the conversations I have with them and, not specific to like this week or the past month but, like I was talking to someone recently, not a counselor, but, a staffer. And I was like, how real is this, like, peacock versus moderate divide? Like, does it feel really like actually acute in the building? And they were like, yeah, like between the counselors, it is super acute. And like, it is a real thing, because I think sometimes the counselors try to say like, oh, the media is just making it a thing. Mm-hmm. But it's a thing. It just is a thing. And you can't really ignore that. Like, you can't watch these past 2 days of public meetings, these budget meetings, and ignore that that's a real dynamic going on.
Yeah, yeah. So Sophie's saying, don't at me. This is real. I'm not just making it up.
That's right. Don't at me.
And there's this thing in American politics that Americans are just great at getting evenly divided on things. And it might have to do with just the way that our government is set up. Because it wasn't supposed to be, two parties. It wasn't like written into the Constitution or anything. It's just that this is the way that the system kind of works out. I don't know. It could be a game theory kind of thing. There's just an advantage to, if everybody's over here, there's maybe some advantage to going in this direction. But it's just kind of amazing how we can get 6-6 on
everything.
Yeah. Well, Sophie, this week, I believe on Wednesday, there's going to be a second and final reading of the budget, right? Like, is it likely that we're gonna find a solution on this in the next couple days? Because I do remember last year it was a different scope, but there was that like last minute sort of shenanigans to fund parks versus police, and there was a solution that was found at the 11th hour. Like, is it possible we're gonna see that again?
My sense is that this past week was really the big push.
Yeah.
I don't think a lot is going to happen at the second reading, but I have been like continually surprised by this council. So it very well could be like, I don't think anything's really off the table.
Oh my gosh. Well, we will be filling in everybody later this week once we know more. Sophie, thank you so much for your reporting and for breaking it down for us.
Thank you.
All right, let's take another quick break. And then when we come back, we're going to talk about literally the worst thing in Portland. All right, Garrett, you have a great story in Willamette Week that came out recently about, and I don't think I'm exaggerating here. It's the most annoying traffic jam in Portland, how to fix it. And of course, we're talking about the Central Eastside, where I think everybody has been trapped by a train, if not multiple times a day. For anybody who somehow has like not had this experience, can you sort of explain what the deal is here?
Right. Well, in the aftermath of this story, I was expecting like a lot of heat about this. And I thought that was a pretty wild claim to say this is the worst something. And there's always like a contrarian take, but I haven't heard anybody disagree with this. And I think it's because everybody has been affected by this, and whether you know it or not, because like the way that the traffic kind of ripples out from something, it'll cause a slowdown in the other side of town. But basically, yeah, there's like 3 surface crossings on the Central East Side with some rail lines. And just for a lot of different factors, the way the city has developed and the way that federal law protects railroads in this instance, and they're allowed to block rail crossings. And so it has led to this situation that we're at, that things kind of are continually getting worse. And for a few reasons, this is a kind of an important moment. This is something that affects everyone. And when I was out there reporting this, I was a little nervous when I was approaching drivers. Like, you never want to talk to someone when they're in like a real like pained moment. And
wait. So you're like knocking on people's windows when they're stuck at the railroad crossing.
Yeah, I have a source on this, Bill Burgle. He's a consultant with the rail industry, and he was down there, and he called me on a Saturday morning, and he's like, "Oh, it's real bad. You got to get down here." And so I got in my car, I think 20 minutes later, and I got there, and I saw the intermodal train, and I was like excited. I was like, "Yes, it's here." And then immediately I'm like, "Oh no, I'm going to be talking to people in like their lowest moments." And what I found was like the opposite. And everybody was like so relieved to see a journalist. It was like validating. Like, of course the paper's here. This is like these ephemeral communities kind of emerge. Like we all kind of have a common enemy. And this is like what maybe the city council needs, is like a common enemy. But these drivers are looking for a way to be proactive, for something to do. And so when a reporter showed up, they were like, hell yeah, like, let me tell you about it. I've been here doing this and that. And I ended up, a few different times going down and asking everybody stop, like where they were going and what it was they were doing. You don't get in your car and go somewhere if you don't have anywhere to be. Like everybody has somewhere to be. The train congestion is getting worse in Portland. And it's for a couple of different reasons. It's pretty bad because trains coming from the north, they have to slow down to 6 miles an hour. They're often going like 20 some miles an hour, but they have to go to 6 miles an hour. And it's because of these tight S curves at the Louis Dreyfus grain terminal. And there's 17 degree curves. There's a horrible squealing sound that you can hear around them. And then these trains don't speed up as they go through town. They're also getting a lot longer, trains are. And this has to do with a few different factors. I was expecting going into this that there would be like a simple answer for this. And I could explain to you like why they're getting longer, but it has to do with like improved technology. And then also it's just more efficient to have a longer train. I asked like, what is like the theoretical ceiling for a train length? And it's something like they have trains in Australia that are like 4.5 miles long, like
oh my gosh.
cars.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
And I guess it's the sort of situation where like the rail companies, the train barons, whoever they are, they can kind of do whatever they want. Like they just have the right of way and they can block traffic if they want to block traffic.
Yeah, there's some court decisions to that effect. Basically, it's interstate commerce, and these are interstate companies, and they have a hierarchy over local and state rules. At this moment, like PBOT is like doing a study that's like kind of one aspect of this, and they're about to give some policy solutions for policymakers. at this time. And then also another thing that we have to watch for is Union Pacific. This is all Union Pacific, by the way. There's another railroad in Portland, BNSF. And they're more in northern Portland, but BNSF doesn't really come into the Central Eastside to the same degree. Also, there's a bunch of trains that are going through here. There's Amtrak, there's TriMet.
We've all had the experience of being trapped by the train. And I also think it's fascinating looking at the businesses that are directly along there and the impact that it has on them too. So we were talking about this at our morning meeting, and our producer Julia was like, I have some friends who are musicians, and you know, the Bunk Bar, which is right there, like hosts shows, but the parking lot and the bar are like across the train tracks. So like there's been times where they're like, bands are trying to like load in for a show and they can't like get their bass amp from the car into the venue. Or like she had another story of a friend who like went out for a smoke break and like got something from their car and like almost missed their set because the train cut them off.
And there's a new music venue, the new Ticketmaster music venue it's on the Central East Side. I mean, there's so many impacts here. There's a restaurant where they give out the train app on the phone when people book their table, because I worked there for an afternoon working on this story, and you just see parties like they don't have their full party there, and then somebody showed up like right as everybody's leaving. And there's this term coping mechanism. Everybody who lives around there has their own coping mechanism for this. And a lot of people, this was another bit of feedback for the story, that a lot of people are just like, who cares? Like, just avoid it. Just don't, if you don't live there, don't go there. And I thought that's so dysfunctional.
But it's such a central path through the city. Like, you know, and I think we've all had the experience of like trying to figure out how to get around the train, like what the path is to like dodge it.
It's usually a worse idea.
It's not a good idea.
Yeah.
I mean, Sophie, what's your train experience?
Well, this happened to me like, I don't know, maybe a month and a half ago. I was just coming back from dinner. So there's one train that went along those tracks. It seemed like it took a really long time. And then it stopped and I was like, oh, yay, the things are going to, open up. And then a second train comes along and then the second train stops. And I actually have asked Garrett about why this happened, because it just made me so furious. It stopped and then it just started backing up.
Yeah.
And I thought, like, what special hell is this?
Well, so what they're doing is the kind of train that is stopping everybody is called an intermodal train. It's intermodal because these are shipping containers, and you can use the shipping as one mode of transportation, the train, and then on trucks. And Brooklyn Yard in Brooklyn is where Union Pacific builds these large 3-mile long intermodal trains. And to do that, they break it up into sections and they kind of jockey them in and out for a little while. And then they head off to the north, usually to Chicago. And as they're doing that, they're inspecting them. If there's a defective rail car, they got to pull it out. All this can take an hour, 2 hours. It can go up to 4 hours. And 9 hours and 4 minutes is the longest on record for just a 15-month period that they were studying this. And it is getting worse, to be sure.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. In your piece, you mentioned something like the train passes 135 times a day.
Yeah, but that could be a Max car. It could be an Amtrak, and they just whiz right by, and then everybody's on. I don't think people would have nearly the same hell if it was just those short trains. But with intermodal trains, these are the stacked shipping containers, and that's where it really gets bad. In
your piece, Garrett, you also get into like what a couple of the solutions might be to this situation, and like thank fucking God, people are actually looking into ideas about how to like fix this and make it better. You bring up a number of different solutions that have been sort of proposed in your article, ranging from like fairly feasible to like it would be amazing, but like might be difficult to make happen. So tell me about the escape route idea. Like what is this and how would it work?
Right. So there's a few different crossings. I think there's like 22 service crossings in Portland, but only one of them is like particularly bad because it's a one-way. And there's a good drone shot in the piece that can kind of show this for you. But 11th Avenue is a one-way. And so when the gates go down, you don't have any way to get out. It just ruins your day. And so one thing you could do, the city owns 2 surface parking lots right there between 11th and 12th. And were they to just, take those over, build a short 2-way street right there, keep it open all the time, that would only cost a few $100,000, and then people would have at least something to do to get out of there.
Okay, and that one seems like fairly feasible, that like it might actually be coming to pass.
Yeah, this is Steve Novick on the council is a fan of this proposal. I think it's easy. I think a lot of people can kind of understand why this would be desirable. It doesn't really get at the root problems of congestion. And maybe one reason this has gotten so bad is because it is a difficult problem to explain to people. The other one I think that would make a huge difference would be improving Brooklyn Yard, which is Union Pacific's intermodal rail yard, where they have these big gantry cranes and moving these shipping containers around. And it's where they build the trains. It's where people are inspecting them as you're leaving. You could build these trains with a few improvements. I think it's like between $40 and $70 million. If you just assembled these trains to the north instead of to the south in the Central Eastside, and it would require some easements and some earthwork and stuff. But it's Union Pacific's problem, and to get a private company to do this, sure, there would be a huge benefit for the public, but right now they don't have that spur. No one's spurring them along, and so with this merger going through, a lot of people think this is the time. This is the only time maybe that railroads are actually responsive to the public. I know last week Steve Novick's office was trying to put together a filing that would allow the city to comment, and that would get at the root causes. There's also a lot of people on the Central East Side are supportive of overcrossings, just to kind of you avoid the problem. These are tens of millions of dollars, though, and adding an overcrossing would require you to close some other surface crossings, which are widely used by cyclists and pedestrians, and a lot of people who have to scramble through the rail cars, which is super dangerous. Apparently, It's a great way to lose a limb.
Oh my God!
And then the biggest idea, and this was the one I think that kind of sparked the initial interest in this piece, was the Albina Riverside project, which if you go there, this would revitalize this 100-year-old grain terminal that was served by the railroad for a long time, and restore this area, which was a historically Black neighborhood. And there's a lot of things that would need to be done, and one of them would absolutely be relocating these tracks. If you go to like the Right to Dream 2 encampment over there, you're looking right down on it, and my thought was like, how do you even get there without crossing these widely used these rail crossings?
Yeah, but that would
super
be
noisy.
And this whole project would be amazing, but this one would be like wildly expensive, right?
Yeah. Like, how do you do this without relocating those tracks? You put them in a trench in the parking lot beside MODA. If you ever see like the visiting team's buses, it's that parking lot right by the river. And this is something that's been done. Bill Burgle, my source on this, he built a trench like this in Reno. It can be done. It would cut down on the noise and the curves, and the trains would be they would go faster, through town, which would reduce a lot of the congestion. So those are the ones we highlighted in the piece, and each of them would make a considerable difference.
I am so eager to see this issue resolved. I mean, and I don't even live on that corridor. Like I get caught by this train like maybe once every couple of months, and I just know so many people that like are living with it every day. When I worked at OPB, I had people who were hosts on the radio and just like lived in fear of being late to work to their shift on the radio because of the train. So I mean, and I think that this is the sort of thing that like everybody has had the thought of like, why is this like this? And like your piece answered a lot of questions for us. So Garrett, thank you so much for your reporting, and fingers crossed we get some motion on some of this stuff.
Thank you.
All right, you guys. Thank you so much for joining us on the show. It is a pleasure to have you both on what turned out to be sort of a Willamette Week super episode. 3 stories from you and your colleagues. So Sophie, Garrett, thanks for all your work. And thanks again for coming on.
Thanks, John.
Thanks for having me.
That's all for us today here on CityCast Portland. Thank you so much for listening. If you enjoyed the show, why not tell a friend or leave us a rating or a review? And please remember, you can support this show and get all sorts of really great perks by becoming a CityCast neighbor. Just visit membership.citycast.fm. We'll be back tomorrow with a whole lot more from around the city. Until then, see you at Slim's. But I'm going to be a little bit late. I'm stuck behind the train.